Mike. I'm very tickled to have you on here today. Again, we have Mike Dunne here, and he is an expert inspector, been a loyal CCPIA member for how long, Mike?
Oh, since its inception?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think during the
I,
year that it came about, yeah.
so I guess let's begin with a little bit about your background. You've not always been an inspector, have you?
Correct. No. My background is actually kind of widespread. From the time I was a kid doing, numerous odds and end jobs, whether it was working with remodeling companies. I worked for a construction company briefly, but I had a lot of odds and end jobs until I was 19 when I moved to a ranch, became a cowboy. Did that full time for 7 years. Absolutely loved it. And met my wife, moved away, joined the railroad. Absolutely hated that. And I needed a way off the railroad. Um, we had just bought a house and we had an inspection done. Well, actually, we had an inspection done on the previous house we wanted to buy. It fell through as a result of that inspection. Thankfully, we had the inspection. Saved us a huge headache. Inspector told me after going over, reviewing everything with me and understanding that I kind of knew quite a bit about what he was talking about. He said, "Hey, by the way, there's going to be a spot open around here for an inspector if you have any interest." So, well, I don't know anything about the industry. But anyways, yeah. So he kind of opened the door right there with the intro that said, "Hey, there's going to be an opening." I was working on the road for the railroad. I had tons of free time and off time within my camp. So I started studying, started doing some research into InterNACHI, ASHI, stuff like that, and just started going through classes while I was working full time. Um, got that done, got all the training done. Originally went with the ASHI, not InterNACHI. But originally signed up with Ashley, went through ICA and then Ashley School, stuff like that. Switched to InterNACHI not long after, maybe a year after joining Ashley. Um, Started doing inspections on the side. I worked a really convenient schedule, 8 on, 7 off. So I could schedule up to a week's worth of full inspections in my off days and then go back to my normal job. I did that for the first 8 or 10 months. I think it was about a year after I started it that I was able to finally decide, you know what, we're going to go full time with this and leave the railroad behind. So I did, and it's been we haven't looked back since. We started the company February 2017. I went full time with it the beginning of 2018. Haven't looked back since. Oh well, I've never been a hobo. I could tell you that. I was maintenance away, so
Okay.
I did track maintenance. I held a variety of jobs, but the one that I held the longest across numerous gangs that I worked on was track surfacing. I ran a DCAT, or what's known as a cat tamper, big 200-foot long rail car machine that lifts, lines, levels, and stabilizes the track. I did that from California to Chicago for 8 years. So
So it's a lot of vibration, right?
yeah, the stabilizer uses vibration to mimic trains running over it. So it actually uses hydraulic down pressure in addition to its own 77 tons to mimic trains rolling over it. So as you're lifting, lining, and leveling the track and then squeezing rock underneath it, it goes right over it right afterwards and shakes it back into place, but it's now perfect and
Yeah.
shook in place. So it mimics a train going over it so that trains can go back to full speed a lot quicker.
So your jump from the railroad to inspections is not unique. Uh, I have, in all my years, boy, it's such a common denominator of had an inspection, watched the inspection, realized I could do the inspection better.
The inspector that I had, or that we were lucky enough to have, he was a mechanical engineer, and he had an engineering degree in something else too. He had worked for 40 plus years as an engineer, and then he decided to do home inspections on the side. The guy was insanely smart. So I don't know that I've ever done an inspection better than what he could have probably done.
Well, you got, I mean, your story, well, your story then is unique because usually when I talk to inspectors, it's like, yeah, I watched it. realized I could do it. I could probably, then I'll use the word, I could probably do it better, or as good. And then in your case, the story's the same. When the part-time job probably pays more or is more enjoyable than the full-time job, you make the part-time job the full-time job, and you never look back.
Correct. And I had so many people on the railroad that said, "Oh, you'll never make as much money as you make on the railroad. Well, you'll never have as much time off." Well, that part is true for the first however many years you get to until you get to the point where you work for a company, not a do-it-yourself job. But they all said you never make as much money. That's a lie. And the money isn't the same. It's non-computable. You're comparing apples to oranges. You're comparing spending, I spent 200 plus days a year on the road away from my family for 7, 8 years. I would exchange a lot of money for the time back that I lost with my kids. So the money doesn't have to equate. To me, it's I'm home every day in my house now.
Yeah.
That's the
And
difference.
there's some certain intangible benefits to being self-unemployed.
Yes, there are. Great.
When you think that I can have a camper, an RV, or a boat in the driveway that's pointed in a direction to leave,
Right.
that I can go, kids, I'll be at every event you ever have, and I'll never miss one.
Exactly. Well, and the way I would put it too is the difference is having a camper in your driveway that never leaves versus the camper in the driveway that leaves when you say so.
Yeah, yeah,
It not when somebody approves your time to take that camper somewhere. It's if you want
I
to
love
take
it.
of the week because you have inspections covered like we do, we have inspectors that do the inspections. Then I took last week and went to Yellowstone, like I mean, we talked about that. My wife was it the week before that, when we were supposed to do this originally. But I mean, I had a week where it was covered. I had an inspector that covered everything for me and no necessity for me to be here. So we went on vacation for a week, you
So
know.
that's interesting. You
Well,
say, uh, it's a difference when I decided to start running it like a business. What was that transition like?
yeah, that transition came from a lot of Audible. I'm a huge fan of Audible. Audiobooks that have saved my life on long drives. I can't tell you how many times, but there was two books really that changed my life. One was the E-Myth Revisited. If you've never, and this to anybody out there, if you've never read the E-Myth or the E-Myth Revisited, read it. It'll save your life in business. The second was Who Not How. That book I didn't even finish, but the premise of the book is very clear. It's made clear in the first two chapters. If you're not good at something, find someone who is and have them do it. Um, and what it teaches you more so than that is it's not just about business, it's about life, but it teaches you that what's the word just escaped my mind. When you put things off, always putting things off.
Procrastinate.
Procrastinate. Procrastination is the best thing for a business owner because it will directly point you to what you're terrible at and what you're good at because you only procrastinate the things you're not good at.
A
Every
couple other books you've probably read or should put on your reading list would be by Jim Collins. And one is Good to Great,
I've never read that one.
and they're quick reads, and the other one is Built to Last.
I've heard of that one.
So Built Good to Great, I love, and it really is a wonderful book of why is one company good and one company is great. And Built to Last is a lot like you just talked about. And it's not filling your bus with people.
No,
It's
no,
putting the right people in the right seats on the bus.
because people are expensive. People are
Yes.
very expensive. So yeah, it's exactly that. And what I learned and I applied it to this business, plus I also have a pest control company and I apply it to that one every day as well as our life is, again, if you're gonna procrastinate something because you're not good at it. I'm great at math. I'm terrible at accounting. So we have an accounting firm and we have a CPA firm. We have two of them. And why? They're really good at what they do, and I'm not. So running the office, there became a time when he didn't want to do it, and I'm not good at it. So we hired a manager. It's you have to put people in place, in my opinion. Otherwise, you'll never get that freedom that you all started out looking. We all wanted freedom as a business owner. The difference is we all start jobs. We don't start businesses. The tricky part goes to when can you make someone else do the business for you, do the work for you, so you can enjoy the benefits of the business.
Yeah. I mean, there are certain entrepreneurs, you being a prime example, that will look at their operation and say, I love the job. I love getting in my vehicle and helping people. I hate accounting. And so, or I hate managing people, or I am not fond of this. I hate might be a strong word. And so you could be the lead inspector in a company, owner, but not the CEO very easily.
Correct. And to be honest with you, I mean, in me 5 years ago, this was me too. More people are suited to that role than would honestly admit. Yes, most of us don't know a darn thing about running a business when we start out as an inspector. For me, I that was the way it was for me too. I mean, I started at my business as an inspector, and it was the inspector. My business was moving. That's my last name. But what I quickly realized is that that was no different than what I was doing before. It was just on different hours, and I had to fill those. What I realized was that to get to the point where I wanted what I actively sought when I left my job, which was freedom of time, to spend more time with my family and independence. I wanted independence from, a master, if you want to say, and we've achieved that. We've had our ups and downs. For all of it, we've persevered the with that attitude. Let me say that. But along the way, I fell in love with you. Talk about what you learn. What you do. I fell in love with the business aspect. The entrepreneurship is what I love. Uh, is getting them up and going, starting them, managing employees. I absolutely hate doing the field work. I don't do inspections anymore myself unless it's for expert witness level stuff. Then I do go on, but all residential and commercial inspections now are handled by inspectors for us, and that's the way I prefer it. I don't want to be out there. I want to be in here building the business, not out there doing the business. So
So so what was your first leap that that fostered that to you? Was it was it I have so many calls I can't keep up, or was that I I want to like you said, I want to pursue this passion I love and let somebody else have a new passion?
it started out with just trying to take some time off of my or some work off of my plate. So when I went full time with my company, when I left my full time paying job and went out on my own, I didn't have the inspections because I live in Cheyenne now, which is only population 60,000. I started this company in a town of 6,000. So, I mean, realistically, to try and grow and expand or go full time, it's not feasible. So, I had other outlets. I did loss control surveys for years. I managed a 3 state region, and that requires an intense amount of scheduling. So, I hired a scheduler. And in hiring a scheduler, I found out that she was really good on the phone and she could also take inbound phone calls for the inspection company. So I started having her do that. And then when she moved on due to pay restrictions, I couldn't pay her much because she was retired and on benefits. So she couldn't work for me anymore. She was making too much money. So she ended up having to move on to a different job. And so once she left and I had to go back to picking up that phone one time, I went, never again. Oh, terrible. Never again. Who can we hire now to answer these stupid phones again? And we hired immediately right. And we've never looked back. I mean, we are currently in between managers as far as people answering our phones right now. But we've never looked back. We've always had someone answering our phones. And from there, COVID hit. So we blew up. So we went to, 4 inspectors plus myself, full-time managers. And then when you scale back after COVID, you find it very hard to put yourself back in the positions that you've delegated. And that's where I'm at. I don't want to go back to any of those jobs. That's what I have people for.
I was going to ask you about Cheyenne and population and And with a multi-inspector firm, or I'll say firms between the inspections and the pest side, you it takes a lot of population to run a decent sized company. So how big a breath do you have to have in geographical size to make what you're doing work?
When I started, it was a lot bigger than it is now. I'll say
Okay.
that. As we've established our name in this region, our service area has shrunk, thankfully. We've been able to cut out certain areas, but yeah, we used to have a 4-hour drive time service area. And most people would just, "Wow." But, realistically, for somebody that was ordering an inspection, um, let's say on a specific road I know of outside of Douglas, Wyoming. I won't name it, but there's a lot of high-end homes on that road. We're the only company that really ever does inspections up there. And to go up there in the wintertime when half of them call you for inspections, you're hiking a half mile through snow just to get to the gate to go hike a half mile down to the house to do an inspection. These inspections are expensive. We charge for the mileage, we charge accordingly. Nobody bats an eye. I mean, it's life in a rural environment. I know
Yeah.
there of inspectors out there. You call an electrician, they're going to charge you a trip fee. We basically have the same thing. Our mileage is not the same as IRS mileage. We charge less than that, but we still charge mileage on everything. And there's also certain areas we used to only service on certain days. So we would book outlying regions, let's say only on a Thursday. We'd book one 2 weeks out on that Thursday, and we'd just hold those other slots open until someone else in that area needed one, and then we'd tuck them in there with it. So we, strategically try to make it advantageous. That's the hard part, though, about hiring like a call center, for instance. We've never used one, and I refuse to because and I don't use the VAs for this job either. We've tried, and it was horrendous. Nobody accounts for drive times. They're used to drive time in a city. It's like, well, this house to this house is 20 minutes because it's 2 miles. Okay,
No, it's this far on the map.
it's that far in the map. And when you're scrolled out looking at Wyoming from here, it's this far on a minute. That's, so we had a lot. We've done the VA route and all that stuff. And what we found is if you're not hiring somebody local that understands it, you're not getting it. So we have always hired local. Our last manager was with us for like 3 years. Uh, she was great. She understood the geographical restrictions. But yeah, I mean, I have an inspector next Tuesday that'll be in Colorado for a couple of inspections, and then he goes to Sydney, Nebraska. And then he has to drive home after that, which is an hour and a half drive home. He'll probably be done at 5:30 that day. He won't get back till 7. He's fine with it, but we schedule accordingly. We work with our inspectors, whatever works for them.
I had that issue in the early 2000s when we switched to I'm going to call it overseas. The call center was actually in Canada,
Okay.
but it's still outside the United States, and that was always our challenge. Is I'm in Chicago, and the call center's answering the phone, and they're pulling it up on whatever map service it is, and it's a 10 o'clock inspection. Oh, that 22 miles is an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't get it. And I know there's a lot of people that use call centers, right? It must take a lot of onboarding and a lot of training. I don't know how they've gone through those headaches, but we found that hiring locally, a here's the thing. Here's the one biggest thing. I mean, I use what resources are out there like any other business owner. But when it comes to hiring employees, I've always had this reservation against hiring out of country for one reason, out of city, even for one reason and one reason only. We all claim to be a local business, all claim to support local stuff, and we all want people to support us. And then we hire people out of the country for $5. I get it. I've done it. It makes sense. I actually currently employ people in a pest control company out of the country. They're only for marketing purposes, though. If I'm going to hire somebody that's going to answer my phone here or do this stuff, they're going to be here. And the reason why is when I show my face at my booth at these places, they know my employees or they see my employees in me. They don't see a picture of a person from the Philippines on there. the person's there. They could talk to them. They're real. And I just, again, it's providing a job in my community. And that's a big thing of pride for me, I guess, as a business owner in my community. It's the employee community.
Going back to your travel, what was that leap, or was it always there that said, I can actually charge for this travel because the consumer will pay for it? Or was that scary for you at the beginning,
It,
going,
yeah.
boy, if I add this, they're not going to hire me?
It was scary at the first, yes. And I've always charged mileage, always from day one, but it used to be ridiculously cheap. I would charge somebody $25 to drive an hour, and that's one way. And then I got to drive that hour back. And no, now you want us to drive an hour, it's probably going to be $100 for mileage. It's,
You gotta think it's not the fuel, and it's not the wear and tear. It's where so many entrepreneurs forget. I think it's the loss of opportunity.
yes. Oh, um, what I forget what book, I think it was Who Not How, where he talks about the power of hiring a driver.
Yeah.
Just a driver to do nothing else but drive you around, and the power of that. I wish I could afford a driver. I would hire a driver just to drive you around, because the freedom that you get, and that's again where when you hire I've jumped past that point now. But yeah, when I was first doing it, yeah, you have to calculate, like, that's all the time you could have spent calling agents or calling businesses or marketing, doing this, doing that. It's all the time you gave up, not to mention the time that you spend driving. If an hour, you're going to compound that hour by 3 in what you lost in productivity capability, not to mention your wear and tear and fuel and everything else in that vehicle. So yeah,
My old rickety sore body just exploded with that, Mike. I'm thinking to myself, if I was back at this age in the field again, which could be fun. I love being in the field, but if I had a driver, even if I hired a 20-year-old to drive me all day long to jobs, I could be on the phone. You're right, marketing. I could be writing inspection reports through the Wi-Fi in my vehicle, so that I could be doing proposals. And that driver's also my Beto, no, my Sherpa.
and easier assistant,
Yeah,
further easier assistant. Yes.
yeah, carrying ladders and setting things up and putting the drop and thinking, anticipating my next steps so I'm ready. And holy
And
moly.
push it one further, because we did this during COVID. When I had 4 inspectors, that was just 2 teams. We ran teams, and this is something that nobody else was doing. But we were doing them because the demand was so high. So I had 2 teams running 3 a day. And you're like, how do you do 3 a day in your region, Mike? Well, the inspection assistant, that's what they were paid for. They were paid at a lower scale than the inspector, who was actually trained up through InterNACHI. Our assistants, we put them through InterNACHI too, but at a slower pace, and they had the option to grade it and stuff. But the assistant's job was to set up ladders, drive, A, drive, but B, set up ladders, open accesses, open electrical panels if that person could. But not only that, their job was to test every door, window, electrical fixture, appliance, blah, 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 all the menial crap that ties up the inspector's time. And then our inspector only had to do one thing: look at the 5 key components. Once they looked at the 5 key components, all the ancillary stuff's filled in with flags or whatever, they could go to review with the assistant. But then the inspector, our time was cut in half. We were doing 3-hour inspections. We went to an hour and a half. They were published before the next inspection, because the assistant was driving to the next inspection. The inspector is sitting there finalizing everything on his phone or his tablet, whatever they were using. And yeah, by the time they got to the next one, reports out, and they're on a number 2, same process on a number 3. We had 2 teams doing that. It was great. So yeah, I mean, for not just hiring a driver, but even just putting them to work on the inspection site too, they do all the menial stuff without any training. It's not hard. Tell me if go around, plug this outlet tester into every outlet. Tell me if it comes back with anything other than this yellow light in the center.
And I was always using the 9-year-olds that were bothering me at the inspection to do that.
That's free. That's free. That's a better way of doing it.
I turn to mom and dad and say, do you trust your child to plug something in? Oh, yeah. Here,
Yeah.
tell me if there's anything other than this light.
Yep, exactly. If they can do it, your chauffeur can do it too.
Yes, I love it, Mike. I mean, what a way to bring employment, but to take your utilization table, your opportunity table, and expand that in such a way that you can take the big thinkers, the inspectors that are juggling, and eliminate that mundane task, but engage them in a more, I guess I'll say, profit centric or client centric side of the process. Well, then that brings me to the next leap. What what was your foster that made you think, well, let's move from residential to commercial?
Demand.
Okay.
Demand. I'm in such an obscure area. There was nobody out here doing them. There's one other company doing them now. There's a lot of Colorado companies that will come up here and stuff, whatever. But at the time, I was the only one. Like, I had so many realtors that would come to me and say, "Hey, would you consider like looking at this commercial building?" I'm like, "Yeah, I already do that stuff." And they're like, "Oh, we didn't know anybody around here did that." And it's still not that big of a thing here. I not to segue or sidetrack too much off of this conversation, but it's a unique environment here in Cheyenne. And I know everybody says they have a unique environment until I ask them this: what's your main competition as an inspection company? And to a T, 99.9% of inspectors are going to say other inspection companies. When you come to Cheyenne, Wyoming as an inspector, you're not competing against inspection companies like mine. You're competing against an electric company, a roofing company. You're competing against the plumbing company, the HVAC company, because all four of them formed a compact trio pact, and they now say that they're doing home inspections, even though they only look at three components of a house, and that is accepted here. So I don't compete against home inspectors. I compete against people that are using licensed contractors to do inspections, and they do the same on commercial. So it's a really unique situation here where everybody is used to just calling up the roofer when they want the roof inspected, the electrician when they want it's a different battle here. They don't go to inspectors around here. It's been an uphill battle trying to show them like, hey, we do all of that in one service at one time, and we give you like 5 times more value than that on top of this, and it's less than what you paid all of them combined. And it
We're
blows.
not going to sell you a roof.
Yeah, and they were going to sell you something. I'm not even going to sell you anything. Yeah. Actually, here's a side story. So I have paid partnerships with companies. There's companies that pay us to be in the reports for the referrals and stuff. And I'm not going to go into the people's opinions on it, but I'll give you an example. I was doing a commercial inspection on a building here in town. The roof was trashed, completely trashed. TPO roof. It was shot, had been shot for a long time. I could tell. I told my client, called him from the roof. I said, "Hey, your roof is shot." He goes, "What do you mean? My dad got an insurance claim on that 7 years ago. What do you mean it's shot?" So, well, I don't know what to do with the money, but it's trashed. I said, "If you'd like, I have a roofing partner I'll bring in, and they just give you an opinion on it. There's no contract shit, nothing like that. They're not going to try and sell you anything, blah, blah, blah." They did end up landing the $350,000 contract, which the roofing company is very grateful to me for, because we're not on a commission basis. They pay me a flat rate fee to be in my reports, and that was just a phone call. But here's back to the hiring thing. I wanted to go into that real quick about this aspect. The thing about hiring locally that you lose when you hire out of local is you lose all the contacts that that person brings to you anyways. It could be a kid. I had a 17-year-old kid working for me last summer in my pest control company. That kid brought me so much business because of who his family knew. Once they found out that he was working for me, the contact referrals that you can get from hiring locally, because everybody knows people. So again, back to that getting people that know people, it builds your network. It massively expands your network by hiring local. So.
I did the same thing you did in the Chicago market. While I never exchanged a marketing fee, the particular specialty consultant, I'm going to use roofer, that I was friends with on a business relationship, He would go anywhere in 100 miles of Chicago for $250. Do a roof core, a full inspection, and a cost to remedy at the same time.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah,
You have to
because
really
he knew he could sell $1 million of a roof.
exactly. And it's all, but that's all relationship building. It's
Yes.
not about trying to get rich quick or trying to make money off their back. It's relationship building. You provided invaluable service to that client because they had a much easier path to getting that roof replaced or repaired or whatever. Uh, like I say, I don't care about people's opinions about it one way or the other. I mean, the way that we did it, we only have 3 referral partners, 3. And it's only because I know and implicitly trust them. I refuse to put anybody else into our partnership program that I haven't seen physically do their work.
I did
Mhm.
the same thing with my environmental ETS environmental that a lot of inspectors are getting to know now. They were very close friends of mine because I would say, "Hey, I'll give your name out, and if somebody calls you before me, know that I'm a commercial inspector, and I'm going to take that work and I'm going to show you respect."
Exactly. Yeah, it's a mutual respective relationship. That's what you
Yes.
have to have. Yeah. And it takes time to build them, but they're worth it.
Oh, good grief! I mean, the
Yeah.
more people that you can have carry your banner high, is the best marketing you could ever have.
Yes.
Whether it's that 17-year-old kid that's out there spraying for ants and taking down wasp nests, or whether it's your roofer. You're right. Everybody knows somebody, and what was the country song? Everybody's famous in their small town, or
Yeah. Famous and small.
yeah. I mean, I grew up in a town of 18,000 people. And it was 18,000 people when I was there. It's 18,000 people today. It's never changed. It was 18,000 when my father was born. And everybody knows everybody. And I've tried to go back there and do inspections. And no, you moved.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're not,
you're up in the big city. We won't, we don't need your type around here.
you're not local anymore. That's
No,
right.
no, your brother is. I
I
think
mean,
I'll call him, but you're not local.
we moved to Cheyenne, and my wife still licenses her truck in the last town we lived in because it's cheaper. And when my renewal came up, she goes, "You want me to just renew yours up there too?" I said, "No, I
No,
want local plates." And she goes, "Why?" I said, "Because it's a company. Like people look at my plates, if they see 7 county, they know you're not from here. If they see 2 county, they know you're local. So no, I want local plates. Sorry."
that's funny. Well, I guess it's about, yeah, I want to transition a little bit. So you started doing commercial inspections, and I remember meeting you back in 18 or 19 the first time. And you've taken your commercial business though, and you've got a referral stream that so many inspectors are trying to figure out, and that's doing work for the government. Was that done purposefully, or just like everything else, accidentally?
Definitely purposefully.
Good.
Um, and it took time to come to fruition. I will say that it was definitely purposefully though. Um, so the way that I got into it was actually incidental contact, I'll say at first, with the government contract just coming down the pipes of an asbestos project. And I knew an asbestos contractor, and we were actually on another project together. And he was just telling me about it. And I was like, "Oh man, how'd you get involved in that?" And he's like, "Well, you registered on SAM.gov. It's a government contract." Oh, I've never heard of that before. He's like, "Look, in your NAICS code, your industry, you're not going to find much." But he goes, "You really should be registered anyways, just in case. You never know." I'm like, "Okay." So we went through the process. It wasn't that painful of a process originally to get into it. I mean, it took, I want to say, a month and a half of back and forth emails, stuff like that, just getting everything done. They have an accelerator program nationally that will help you on board with all of this. It's excellent. So yeah, I went out and registered literally a month or 2 after he told me about that, and it wasn't until 2019, 2020. No, it'd be 2020 or 2021 when we got our first contract. And that was a good 2 year, 3 year period where we didn't see anything from it. And it wasn't even a direct hit that got us our first contract because we're not a prime. We're not a prime contractor. And most government contracting is prime, prime level. That's your big time Hansel Phelps, stuff like that. The big time contractors that are bidding in the hundreds of millions or billions of dollars on projects. These are the ones that go after a lot of the stuff that applies to what we do. Um, so I was registered for several years as a government contractor. I was monitoring the bid line. I would put in, I would put in things here and there that I thought I was interested in, doing the best that I could. But it wasn't until I really sat down with Janine from the Apex program and we really dialed in the NAICS codes and the search parameters and stuff like that, which they've all gone away with now because of some website grievance. And so they're rebuilding a website that's not live yet. So you can't actively get your search results sent to you now. Or at least last I knew you couldn't. I still don't see them come in. So I assume they haven't fixed it. But you can still go out there and search it yourself. I was just searching them 2 hours before this call, actually. There's one I was uniquely interested in because it pertains exactly to one of my contracts. It's kind of funny. Surfing these bid sites will also give you insight into the projects that are going on in your area that you might not have a clue about. Just going through SAM.gov, and looking up their bids for your state, I tell you what, it'll open people's eyes to stuff that's going on around them and what you might have other avenues of opportunities for. You might see a bid coming up that, you have no possible chance of being involved in, but you might know people that are, and you might say, hey, I can provide this service or that service, and they can bring you in as a subcontractor. That's everything we've done is as a sub under primes and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's still a good idea to be there. Now, being there was what led to our first contract. We weren't in consideration for the contract because it was such a huge contract. But when the prime got it and then allocated down from there, um, because we were listed on there, we were a phone call from an engineering firm that was awarded a contract under the prime. And they said, hey, we jumped on and found that you do sewer line inspections. I said, yeah, I do sewer, sir. Yeah, I do sewer inspections. Yeah, what do you need? Well, we need like 20,000 feet of sewer mains videoed on Air Force Base. Like, okay, cool. Yeah, I can probably do that. Let me make some phone calls. I'll get back to you. No idea what they were talking about. So I got off the phone and started making phone calls, seeing how I could rent a pipe crawler. Turns out it's not that hard. And so once I found out that you could rent them, I called the guy back and said, hey, what licensing do I need? What certifications do I need? And he goes, nothing. Can you put a camera down a pipe and provide a video of it? I said, yeah. He goes, okay, cool. Contract's yours. We just need to figure out pricing. I went, what? Okay. All right. And so from there, they were really gracious. They actually really helped us in the process. The engineering firm has been doing it for a long time, and their employees know the process really well. So they were really helpful. And I have found that everybody in the contracting world is really helpful. They all want you to get the job. Everybody wants you to get the work. It's nuts. It's the opposite of the private world where everybody's like, I want you to get it. Now there's people in this process that they're literally paid to make sure that people like you get the job. I mean, especially when these bids go to priority small business owner. Priority small business owner award will only go to a small business less than 10 million a year in revenue, less than this many employees, stuff like that. Well, if you count as that, which all of us inspectors do, you're going to be in that consideration versus that engineering firm that has 150 employees, does 50 million a year revenue. They aren't even in consideration. They can put a proposal in on it. They won't even be considered. So there are advantageous aspects and disadvantageous aspects, but being on there and at least making people understand it, again, drilling down in your NAICS codes on what you're comfortable with doing, putting it out there that you're open and available for bidding on these NAICS codes. It might be building inspections. It might be sewer surveys. It might be environmental surveys. I've done phase ones and phase twos on government property under environmental firms that didn't want to send somebody out here from San Francisco, whatever, wherever they were from, Texas or whatever. Here's a unique one too. One that we just wrapped up last year. We have multiple contracts going on base, but we wrapped up one contract that came across my desk out of the blue. Have you ever heard of a UPV inspection?
No, I have not.
Hey, a UPV is a unfired pressure vessel. You know what that is? It's a propane tank.
Oh, good golly.
It's propane tanks, people. Air compressor cylinders, air compressor
Yeah.
tanks, propane cylinders, oxyacetylene cylinders. Those are all unfired pressure vessels, UPVs. So the Air Force needed all these propane tanks inspected and air compressor tanks inspected on base. I was like you, I'd never even heard of UPV, but let me make some phone calls, see what I can do. Turns out there's companies out there that do exactly this business. What were we talking about earlier? Who not how, find who's good at it, figure out how to do it. I just find the people that are good at it. I do what every other government contractor does. I find the next person in line to do things. I have projects on base that I have never gone on base for. I have projects on VA facilities in the asbestos world that I've never even laid eyes on. I just sub everything out as much as I can. The sewer survey stuff, we got into that really heavy. We just wrapped up the third phase of a minimum 5 phase contract. So for that one, I actually went out and bought a pipe crawler last year.
Okay.
Uh, you
What'd you
might
buy?
have bought an Aries Pathfinder 2. So I paid a ridiculously low amount of money for a $70,000 pipe that now
I uh,
works phenomenal.
I spent a year writing manuals for rehabilitation, and so all of our trucks had the German Schwalm.
Never heard
Uh,
of that.
it's a $1 million robot with brass wheels. It can crawl through a pipe as small as 4 inches, but as large as I
Ours
don't
will
know.
do down to a line 6. So like a SIP line 6, ours will do it, but that's on running the smallest wheels. That's just the crawler dimensions. It can't fit much smaller than that. But we were using pipe trekker out of Canada. So the first 2 phases of our project, we just rented the crawler. And pipe trekker out of Canada has some really good rental rates. You can rent, it's like 30,000 for the month for one crawler, or it's like I think it's 1,000 a day or something like that. Yeah, believe it or not, that's actually a really good rate. I know it sounds high, but it's really not. But when
But
we
if
got
you're billing 10,000 a day, okay.
exactly, yeah, and I mean we weren't billing 10,000 a day, but we were billing because ours were billed out per linear foot. That's the way the way that they needed it is look, it was much easier for us to just come up with the price because they kept adding the tracking stuff constantly. I mean, anybody that's ever dealt with any sort of government contract knows that it only changes 100 times before it's done. Maybe you're lucky if it changes only 125. But uh, we just went the route of buying a home because honestly, I got sick of other people's crap breaking down on me. I was renting these crawlers and then they'd break down and well, then you have to ship it back and ship it back. It's a $500 shipment every time. So you just bought one. Somebody actually posted in a Facebook group that they had one for sale down here in Denver. I messaged him that night. I was like, "Are you serious? That's that cheap?" I only paid 20 for it. You'll probably understand. It was 20 on a crawler. It added 25 grand in work. We sent it into Aries. They did 25 grand in work that we had to pay for and all that stuff. But we now have a $70,000 pipe crawler for $50,000 into it. So, and
With what you're saying of, so that intimidation factor of venturing into government had to be huge.
nerve
Of
wracking, nerve wracking. Yes, very nerve wracking.
And that month it took you to go through the SAM site, to get your SAM number, to get listed, and then to spend a couple of years, let's just even say striking out. Yeah. And so I find it brilliant and perfect that you went to your listing had the primes coming down to you, and then you going, oh yeah, okay, let me get another sub. So it's a sub of a sub of a sub. It reminds me, one of my college jobs in the summer was EEOC work on federal contracts of a major road build. So every day I had to go out and count workers and say, there's this many female, there's this many male, there's this many of this ethnic origin, there's this many of this ethnic origin, because in order for this contractor to get properly paid for this federal work, they had to make sure they had the right ratios
Yep.
and the
Yep.
right ratios of ownership in prime versus sub versus small business versus it could be minority or women owned. And so all of these become, I guess I'll use the term tick boxes
Yes, they
for
do.
the primes.
And the more ticks you have, the better.
Yeah.
100%. Yes. If you have if you have the ability and the good fortune to be woman owned or minority owned, yes, absolutely. I mean, especially when those bids come up for those specific allocations. Yeah, those are. We tried to do that during COVID. It's not as easy to go to woman owned as you would imagine. My wife tried to take ownership of it, like we wanted her to, because it does favor you in certain government bid situations and stuff. And not that easy to transition to a female owned or a woman owned company from where we both own 50% of it now. It's not a matter of just going 51-49. It's a process, but so we didn't do it. But yes, the more boxes you check off, and not only that, just your willingness to do the work. If somebody calls you and says, "Hey, we've got this project coming up, and really just need someone to do this one aspect," do it. Even if it takes you a little bit of time to go out and research it to make sure that you're doing it right, do it. I mean, there's classes you can take for sewer line surveys. And I was going to field a truck in the field. My guys would have it. We don't need it at this point, but I mean, it opens doors too. I mean, we never imagined that we'd have a pipe crawler sitting in a shop, that doors open from this stuff. We now have two of the state's largest construction companies that are using us for municipal projects. They're redoing the entire sewer and water main infrastructure upgrade on a town. And they just found out 2 months ago that we do the sewer line surveys, and they told us, "Great, we wish we'd have known about you on this project." They had us come in and do the cleanup on the project, and then told us we'll use you on everything for the state. Just they saw me on a listing. That's it. They just saw me on a listing and called me directly. So it's
So
worth it.
to sprinkle a little happy dust or magic dust on all this, and I'm not going to ask you any specifics because it's none of my business. In any of these government contracts, have they involved six figures?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. We're in
There
the
you
6 years on the one already. Yeah. Like I say, we're over 6 already, and we're only done with 3 of the 5 phases. And there might be a 6th phase. It depends on how they break it. Originally, it's only going to be a 4-phase project, and then I went to a 6-phase project and 5-phase.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, but
and it's
oh,
just being listed. So you talked about you did it yourself and you worked really hard. SAM. So SAM stands for System Award Management System
I
Management.
I did, but I did have Janine, our local Apex Accelerator, help me on it a lot.
Okay.
Like I said at the beginning, talking about that, the Apex program is available nationally. It is everywhere you are. I guarantee it. There is someone local to you in your Apex program, and they will help you on board and get all set up. They know everything about it. So if you want the magic dust to how this stuff works for you, call that program. Um,
And that's SAM.gov, which is truly a federal website. Then there's also USFCR, which is the U.S. Federal Contractors Registration, or USFCR.gov. I'm sorry, .com. They're a private company that will help you do all these things, but that's at a fee. My understanding is Apex there's no fee for that.
it's a government program. It's free.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are government employees paid to help small businesses get into the government contracting world. That's the only purpose of the program. So yeah, and there's companies like that at the state level too. So I'm subscribed to all of our state level and city level bids as well. through it's a different program for state level stuff, but there are programs or there are people for those as well. But there are companies for those that will charge you an exorbitant amount of money to do everything that I just said, but you have the resources out there for free. So
There was a company out when I was running my operation that had an online governmental contract service where they would put out the RFPs and they would put out, jobs that were going out for bid all the time. They were listed. And I subscribed to it. It was an inordinate amount of money. And as you said, so much of that work I wasn't directly qualified for, but indirectly I had all the knowledge and I know I could do it. And
yeah,
so I was always scrambling for, okay, I'll be the sub, but you'll be the prime, because you have the first credentialing they needed. Maybe that credentialing was PE.
right, exactly. Could have been that. Well, and that's like I said, even on the asbestos stuff that I do, I let my asbestos license go 2 years ago. I stopped doing all the asbestos surveys myself. I just because I found a really, really good subcontractor just south of me in Colorado. Actually, I think they're in Boulder. But anyway, they do all my work in both states up here because Nebraska and Wyoming are way different from Colorado when it comes to asbestos. We don't have Reg 8 up here like you guys do. But I once I realized that they were so adept at doing what I was not, and I was like, I knew everything they knew. They were just quicker at it than me. And so they could do exactly what I could do in half the time. And I could make money on the top end just by up charging them just a touch. Sure. I don't even have to leave my desk. You know. And a lot of that stuff I never would have considered until I got into it. I realized how many subs there are in any project. I mean, anytime you go out on a government contract, you're not even looking at the prime. You're looking at a girl or one of the 17 subs underneath them.
You meet the prime on letting day, the day the job is let to the public, and you meet the prime on walkthrough day. Otherwise, the prime never shows up to a project until the last day of the party.
And I will say this, the primes all have their own requirements too, that you're going to have to meet as their sub. Like we've had to increase our insurance coverage since we started our first project on the Air Force Base because most of the primes had 2 mil minimums and we just had 1 mil minimums. So, I mean, it's not that big of a deal to change it to 2 mil anyways. But yeah, I mean, we've had to change certain things and the way that we do delivery on certain goods is way different. The one note I wanted to make though, to go back a little bit on something you said, I wanted to clarify the point. Make sure when you guys are doing this or when anybody's doing this that you go look up the NAICS codes and go read through them sometime. Don't just Google what your NAICS code is for inspector or whatever, because that's one NAICS code. There should be a minimum of 3 or 4 NAICS codes that really apply to your business, really. And if you have less than that, you're not going to ping on many search results. Again, back to the tick boxes, think outside the box. Sewer, they don't call things inspections in this world. They're surveys. So if you want to look up if you want to find a place for your camera head on your sewer scope to go down, go look up a pipe survey or go look up a sewer survey or a stormwater survey. Those are the ones that are going to be looking for guys with cameras that can go down pipes. They're not looking for inspector or inspections. They're looking for surveys. So make sure you go through and find the NAICS codes that apply to all those things in a unique way. I think we have like 6 or 7 NAICS codes. But yeah, it's dive in and go deep. Make sure you tick all the boxes you can for sure.
Just to make sure we circle this, what does NAICS code stand for?
Oh gosh, national something identification. I don't even know. I'd have to Google it. I
All
don't
right.
even know off the top of my head.
So again, let's kind of circle this wagon here a little bit.
There it is.
What,
North American
what,
Industry Classification System. There you go.
okay, thank you. So what our viewers are going to get out of this is there is a nice transition. You can transition out of the field. It works. And it works in Cheyenne, Wyoming. It can work in Boca Raton, Florida. It can work in Bangor, Maine. It can work in Orange County, California. If you have an entrepreneurial mindset, I love the idea of hiring a driving assistant. But the real thing I wanted to talk with you, Mike, was this government stuff. And when we think of, let's just think of practicality. The large portion of our individual earnings that goes to the federal government, and then the federal government's apportioning out to keep their infrastructure churning, there's a lot of money there.
Yeah, a ton of money. Yeah.
And right or wrong, spent wisely or not wisely, that's not for this debate. Our conversation is, we have a unique ability, and correct me if I'm wrong, to fulfill a need for other contractors or ourselves. And there's a way we can go after it.
Yes, 100%. And there's avenues to go after those that are a lot easier than people think. It's not as daunting, like we're talking about.
So using the programs available, the Apex program, which has a government employee help you get government work by listing you properly, the SAM registration, which if you can solve the Rubik's Cube, you could probably muster going through those steps.
Yeah, you can. You totally can.
And then going and hiring somebody like USFCR and have them help you through that process. Even transitioning your commercial avenues into unique positioned opportunities is a good way to enhance your portfolio.
It definitely is. I mean, best case that I can give people as a reference, and I don't know the details of it, so it's a really fuzzy case to tell you, but a lot of people that are listening to this or whatever, they might recall just a year or two ago, there was a really large contract awarded for inspecting like 5,000 houses across the bases across the country. And a prime got that, and they hired an inspection company. Of where were they out of? I forget. It's far beast, but they hired an inspection company to put all this together. You guys, this is not something that's abnormal or rare or whatever. This is just normal government contracting. Prime grabs it, finds them a sub to fulfill it, and then the sub finds somebody else. And that's exactly what that inspection company was doing, calling everybody, saying, "Hey, are you willing to go do this? Are you willing to do that? You're looking for subs." That's all it is.
And what's the proper answer? Yes.
The proper answer is yes. Yes.
And I'll figure it out.
For us, it was a hard no on that opportunity because they couldn't even come close to meeting what we needed to replace our inspectors with. And we were tied up in the middle of a project on a base ourselves. But for a lot of other inspectors out there, that opportunity would have been huge for anybody to jump on, because not just getting involved in it, but just seeing the process, seeing what's involved, at what aspects you can see, and then seeing what happens when you're on base, seeing what happens when you're out on these government properties is nowhere near as crazy as people think. It's really late. It's really late, honestly. But that opportunity could have opened the doors for a ton of inspectors, because the inspectors, a lot of them were subbing out. They're doing the bases locally. These are people on base that are doing business in your town. They're building houses in your town. They need sewer scopes. They need termites. You know, they need all this stuff. It's networking constantly while making money.
I did 300 Super 8 motels without leaving my office.
I love that.
By just picking up the phone and going to my Rolodex back in those days. Because I don't even know if the internet was around. It was all done by fax, of me just calling. Can you do 5 in Colorado? Can you do 10 in Las Vegas? Can you do 8 in California?
Yep.
It's not tough.
Yeah, sure thing. When do you need them done by?
Yeah.
Okay, not a problem.
Yep. And if it's the end of the day, they'll give you a free room.
Yeah, and then you figure it out from there. That's when you figure it out. I got done. This is a pest control one, but I got done playing around the golf at a local golf course the other day, And one of the groundskeepers was riding by me, so I just waved him down. I was like, "Hey, notice you guys have a ton of rodents, like a ton of prairie dogs and moles on hole number 1 on the right side." And it's like, I know they're all over the golf course and stuff. He's like, "Yeah, I know they're getting really bad." He's like, "Nobody takes care of them, blah, blah, blah." It's like, "I do. I have a company for that, you know?" And it's like, "Sweet, submit a proposal." So I did. Without even looking at the property, I just blindly submitted a proposal that I know will make me money on the job. I know I'll make money on it. Now I just have to figure it out if they accept it.
There you
That's
go.
it. The money's there. If they accept it, the money's there. I know I can make it work for the amount that I bid it. I don't know how I'm going to make it, but that's because I don't have the contract yet. When the contract comes across your desk, then you figure it out. Don't figure it out.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we did with the motels is okay, how are we gonna do this? Okay, here's what we're gonna do, and we're gonna do it this way. And I had every of one of my subs take a roll of film. Again, it's
Yeah,
old
yeah.
of each property. They were required and used the photos. I threw the rolls of film away 5 years ago, undeveloped,
Wow.
because
Never
I never needed them because there was never a callback. But I thought that's going to be my SOP. It's a simple roll of 35 millimeter film. Cost you at that time probably $4.
exactly. Yeah. And now not well, now it'd probably be twice that.
If I could even get it, but it doesn't matter. The comedy was it just like you said. Yes, I can do it. Let me figure out how, because I already know I'm going to make money. But now
Yep.
I got to figure out how to do it to make the money. Because if I had to travel to every one of those Super 8s, you know who makes money? Southwest Airlines
Yeah.
and Enterprise Rental.
Yeah. And the fuel companies.
Yes. Where if I'm sending out local, they're making money.
I 100% agree. I mean, outsourcing, I'll put it this way. Even when I look at bids now, even before I even consider whether or not it's something that I would take on, or as I'm looking at them as whether or not I would take them on, I don't look at them as, is that something I do? I look at every bid now as, do I know anybody that does?
There you go.
Literally don't. Like I said, I just looked at the bid line like 2 hours ago on SAM, and I was scrolling through the states that were Wyoming, Nebraska, and Colorado that we scroll. And I was like, do I know anybody that does this? Do I know anybody that does this? And I had literally bid jobs before where I didn't know anything about it. And I've gotten them. UPV inspection. I got that bid. I got that contract. And I just upbid my sub by $3,000. And I never left my office. It was great. I loved it. You know,
That's fantastic, Mike. Mike, thank you so much for taking your time today. I mean, we're rolling up here on the hour, and I want to be very respectful of your time and plus our listeners. Again, I think government work is an opportunity. It's an opportunity. I think it's beyond. Residential inspectors could do it, but I think it's a different mindset. I think having that commercial mindset is critical because you're not just transactional. You're actually thinking to yourself, every client is different. Every client has a different need. Every job here, as you're looking at, is different. And you're going to fulfill that need. So thank you, Mike.
so remember this. You're a contractor.
Yes,
We all talk crap on contractors. Remember, you get in this world, you are a contractor.
you are one. If you look in the mirror, you're seeing one.
Yep, that's right. All
Thanks,
right.
Mike, so much for taking your time. Stay safe.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rob. You too.